I'm cleaning right now. I'm trying to be busy. But I suppose I'm cleaning my conscience. I don't really know. There's nothing else to say, but, if this is like, this movie, his whole career, right, it's a legacy to him, like, not respecting women, right? I can't help but think, right, that Quentin, right, did he manipulate Daniela into marrying her because he was put in sexual sadism jail at the same time that Harvey Weinstein was being, right, persecuted as far as Me Too, right? I keep thinking about when they got married. I don't want to look it up, but it might frighten me a little bit if I had my spiritual awakening the same day. And I think that might actually be the case. I don't know, but it does make sense. It makes all the sense in the world, right? That if he was overextended, right? That he was treating a bunch of women in Hollywood the same way, like with his mind, the way Harvey was treating them physically. Then would he not, right? Would he not marry, right, arguably the finest woman in the world, to say, oh, and she's a freak, like, here, I'll do it with her, I'll do everything with her, right? And that's what gave them, right, that's why they agreed to make Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Isn't that, right, is that, right, because if that was the deal, right, he didn't hold up his end of the bargain. Right? And so however he was behaving, like with Harvey, before Me Too, before Daniela, right? He did the same thing to Mikey and Sydney and Margaret. Right? And so now Sophia's included in the mix, right? And he turned them all out at the same time, and they were all ignorant. They didn't understand. Right? So what I'm saying is that Hollywood as an industry, right? That you did nothing to hold him accountable. You did nothing to make sure that they were safe at such a vulnerable, impressionable age, And is this not, like, is that, right? Is that not, like, right? So you guys are okay with, like, admitting that, like, knowing how he's been his whole life, that you just said, oh, okay, Quentin, you turned over a new leaf, you got the wife, right? And then as soon as he got married, right, he just kept doing the same thing, right? Because she didn't understand. She didn't appreciate, what she represented in the formula, right? That he manipulated her, he was disgusting to her, right? And undoubtedly he's done disgusting things, right? And maybe what he hates most of all is that I don't care about that. And so I suppose in the women's minds that they're like, oh, it's not bad because, like, he doesn't penetrate us, right? Like, with his cock. But, and of course they said the same thing about Harvey, don't they? That he's like, he tried to, like, go down on women, and they didn't want him to do that. Right? But it's pretty disgusting to consider how you see Daniela as, like, this totem of, like, this, like, sexual fairy, this, like, hot fucking thing, and they're like, okay, the industry's like, cool, right? He's got him one, she's real good looking, and I know that he can do everything that he wants to do to her. For him to cast 5 young women in his next film, and for, right? Like, that's like, do we see that, like, none of you actually cared, that none of you were interested in seeing him behave differently? That that's like, right, that he's been manipulating all of you the entire time. Right? That's, right? He smiles to your face and spits on your back. That's like what he's been doing this entire time. He doesn't respect any of you, and he respects those women least of all. Right? He doesn't respect Brad Pitt. He doesn't respect Timothy Chalamet. He doesn't respect Paul Walter Hauser. He doesn't respect Sam Jackson. He doesn't respect Sydney Sweeney. He doesn't respect Mikey Madison. He doesn't respect Margaret Qualley. He doesn't respect his beautiful wife, Daniela Pick. Right? That they've all these years now, 7 years now, 8 years now. You've all just like turned a blind eye, right? And so what I'm telling you right now is that like they're all so ashamed of like how they live, right? They don't have the heart to admit how disgusted they are with their lives. That's the real point, right? That Quentin exacts such a hideous sadism over all of their psyches that they just genuinely feel they have no choice but to submit. And so what I'm saying is that's fucking disgusting, right? That's right? No, that's a reign of terror. That's tyranny. That's what it is, right? And so he's gearing up, right, to splay these scenes all over the world, right, which I call first-degree rape. Oh, very funny. Oh, it's like, here's the form. But what I'm, yeah, right? You understand my point, right? That what I'm saying is that they signed the thing, right, because he exacts sadistic, evil torture upon their psyches, right? And so that's why it's legal duress, right? Signed under threat of imminent danger, right? When all of your thoughts, right, can be manipulated and tortured at will, you know? That's... Like that they live perpetually in a state of fear of imminent danger, right? If not for themselves personally, then for Daniela and Sophia who live in that house, you know? And so this is, right? If Quentin told you he was going to turn over a new leaf, right? Ari Emanuel, Mike Simpson, right? If he told you that he wasn't going to be the way that like he's been, right? Then has this whole saga, right, not proven to you definitively, right, that he is incapable of growing up, that he is incapable of, right? Because if the fine witch that he married, right, you got to respect that, right? Like in so denying them the right to see me, right, he's still saying women are only objects, that I don't respect what they have to say, I tie them up and violate them in satanic fashion. Right, so we can't be okay with it anymore. You know, it's not about me losing my virginity. You know, like that's not what it's about. But if that's something that they fantasize about, isn't it time for the women to like have a sexual fantasy? You know, like isn't that right? I think that that's fair. I think that that's fair at this point, right? For him to manipulate them into signing over, right? Did they offer to do the movie for free? So that's probably $40 million right there you would have saved. Right? Quentin would have shown that he does respect women, he doesn't objectify them. Right? And then it could have all been under the aegis, under the umbrella of his psychic sexual sadism. But instead, he had to exact this disgusting evil over all of us, to compel them into submission, to compel me into the street, right? Compel me into, right? If you read the novel, right? The things that he does, that Alistair Hoffman does to Michelangelo daguerreotype are the same things that Quentin did to me for a year. Right? Blasting my mind with suicidal ideations, visions of violence. Right? And so it's not about if what I'm saying is objectively true. It's about what it represents in the adept practitioner who behaves that way intellectually. Right? Like as a Socratic dialogue. Right? That if you all are aware that Quentin is exercising his mind towards compelling me to commit suicide so that he can continue to objectify these women, then you're all sick and you do all need to be locked up. So I'll keep talking about it as much or as little as I want. And I know that, right, there's a clear line in the sand. We're touching on real ethical criminal responsibility. You know, that's what I have to say about it. You know, and so all of these agencies, right? Like no matter, you know, something's gonna happen tomorrow. I feel like, you know, something's gonna happen in a few hours. You know, like I don't know. I hope that we reconcile. You know, like that's like what I want. You know, but if they just allow it to persist, you know, any longer, you know, I have to bring the LAPD to WME. I have to bring the LAPD to 1822 North Vermont Avenue and say, I need you to produce these people and put them in front of me so that we can talk to the authorities together. You know? Because they're either free or they're enslaved. So, I do pray for them and I hope that they're safe. I am in love with all of them. Don't think that this is a joke. God bless.